footer. The changed, the industry has changed. 36, 38 feet. There was a day that 36 feet was ludicrous. There was a day that 24 feet was ludicrous. Well, those days are all behind us. So when we have these users, and we've talked to many of them, there's excitement. As Aaron alluded to, we need to have solar energy. This is what they're requiring, they being the potential tenants. It's also important to note that our buildings, you all have, that's public now, go and look at our buildings and our designs. They're beautiful buildings. But the reason you need to understand why we are all sitting here, this doesn't mean diddly in the world of us and these buildings. What happened is how the laws that are written in this county, if you're looking at the front of the building, you're looking at 45 feet heights, okay?
Under current zoning.
Under current zoning, you're looking at a 45-foot height that gives me about 38 feet inside. Tenants don't look at square footage anymore. They look at cubic foot because they're racked. These things are racked systems. So when we're looking at 45 feet and how the current document is written, we would have to tilt the back of the building like that so everybody can see, because of how our driveway goes around complete 360 degrees, and that's a safety issue. It's a 360 degrees. We're going to tilt the building. Once we tilt that building, so you're going to see 45 feet at the front, but because how we go down, it has to dip down, trucks back in, come up to the door. That 5-foot difference changes everything for us. Now our building goes from this to this. What's the water do? What's the stormwater do? Where does it end up? The stormwater flows that direction, flows to the back of that building, then flows into the Chester River. We are an environmental firm through and through. We're environmental scientists. We are very LEED. We are very green. In order for us to maintain the integrity of the environment that is sitting there, I need to get a flat roof. So this all started because when the truck comes in, goes around, backs up, when the truck loading docks dip down, now we have to use the mean. Once we use the mean, it shifts the roof. Once it shifts the roof, it shifts the water flow, the stormwater flow. So the difference to us is I need to get a flat roof, and I need to have the ability to put in solar panels because that's what everybody is asking for. So that's really industry standard nationwide.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We just would thank you for your consideration and urge your favorable recommendation to the county commissioners on this question.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this matter? Yes, ma'am. Come forward, please. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Yes. I'm Catherine Walraven Durham, 10970 Dudley Chance Road. I live across the street from one of the proposed warehouses.
Ma'am, can you pull that mic a little
Yes.
closer? Thank you.
How's that? Sorry I didn't get to go before them, because now well, it was something I wanted to add also, that there are no woods beside my house, so I would be seeing everything and anything that would be built on the property that they're speaking about. I also agree with Mrs. Langenfelder, and in my comments you'll hear that I would rather see something like a Dixon Valve type building than an Amazon warehouse that we see in Middletown. So sorry. Good afternoon, Planning Commission. I'm here today to tell you why I am opposed to the proposed text amendment, specifically changing the height allowance on buildings in the 301 growth corridor from 45 feet to 60 feet. In the past, I have stated my opposition to the size of the proposed buildings in this area. Now, this amendment would allow for an even bigger building. Obviously, I find this to be totally unacceptable and actually unbelievable that such a thing would even be considered and asked to be looked at. This size building does not match with the surroundings of my area, or any area in Kent County. Growth in any part of Kent County should match with, preserve, and enhance the already existing areas here in our county, as stated in our Kent County Comprehensive Plan. Just because 301 runs straight through this part of our beautiful county does not mean that this part of the county's looks and feel can be ruined by allowing uncontrolled size buildings along the way around the 291 and 301 intersection or the lands between there and the town of Millington. This would certainly please developers, but certainly would not please most Kent County citizens who live in the area. This would not be preserving the rural character of our area. Our quality of life would be changed forever. Our Kent County Comprehensive Plan says that new development in our county should preserve and enhance our county's existing landscape with its rural and historic resources and be inviting to our tourists. How about having it be maintaining for our own Kent County residents' quality of life? How would all of this look to visitors who are entering Kent County from 301 and 291? And as Mr. McLeod was saying, that there are trees and woods around, but not on the Chesterville Bridge side of the whole property, of which I live across the street from. Where and when will this idea end? When the developers are finally happy with getting what they want? What they think is best for Kent County? They do not care about what Kent County already has to offer right now for its citizens and our visitors. The future of Kent County, what will be next? Developers wanting to change more and more of our comprehensive plan land use ordinances to fit their needs? How about growth along 291 all the way to Chestertown, or 213 between Galena and Chestertown? How about down Route 20? What will the residents of Kent County think about those places being developed? I would think that most would not even want it to be considered, let alone be proposed as a text amendment. It is the Planning Commissioner's role to see what is best for all of Kent County residents. I hope that you do consider this when hearing from all of the residents who care about this matter at hand and about our county itself. Thank you for your time and your considerations.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this? Come forward, please.
I'm on a telephone connection. Can you hear me? Do I have the right buttons turned on?
Yes, ma'am, you do. If you can mute now, I'll be calling on the call line after the testimony I've heard here. So just be patient.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, state your name.
Michael Kent, 31245 Chesterville Bridge Road. Just wanted to ask the Planning Commission to consider not giving this a favor or a positive recommendation simply because it does not fall, like everyone has said already, into the comprehensive plan framework. You know, we feel that a building's an entire third larger than what's already called for in that plan is, you know, a pretty big difference. And I'm sure that Everton can build a beautiful building, but as Dixon has shown already with their new development, you know, it seems that the goal can be accomplished staying within that framework.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To be fair, people, the woman who was online, would you like to testify?
Yes.
State your name
My
for the...
name is, sure, Melinda Bookwalter. I live on West Edge Road, about a half a mile where the two warehouses are going, right off the little circle to the west of 301, which certainly is not designed for heavy-duty traffic, but that's not about a 60-foot height. If you were to drive the 301 corridor, as I see it in Kent County, is about 10 miles, give or take, long. If you were to drive from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge through Queen Anne's County, then you hit Kent County, and then you hit Cecil and Delaware, which of those counties is the most pleasing to drive through? And that is the character of Kent County. I take exception with what Chip McLeod said, that it's not what you see on the outside of the building, it's what's inside the building. Not from our perspective. What you see on the outside is very large and not in any way compatible with anything that exists. I think one reason that the 301 corridor has gotten highlighted is because it is the most agrarian from the Bay Bridge to Cecil County, and that's where the land is that they can get. And I'm just concerned about the precedent of filling up that 10 acres with a lot of this sort of thing. What about the Dutch Family Deli property that's in the corners that Everton and Russ Richardson are acquiring property? What's going to happen there? Just going forward. Hey, our house is 20 feet tall. This is 3 times the height of our house. I'm not understanding what Dan Gorell, and I might have it mispronounced, was saying about the 45-foot height and that it's going to be a flat roof. He didn't go into any detail about how stormwater is managed with a flat roof, 60 foot tall. And also, is it just the solar panels on top of a 45-foot roof that brings it up to 60 foot, or what? I guess my biggest concern is what other people have said about it is not part of the rural and historic and scale for Kent County. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else on the phone that would like to give testimony? Okay, back here, is anyone else here want to testify? Please state your name for the record.
Janet Christensen Lewis, Millington, Maryland. Thank you for allowing public testimony here today. The state constitution, Article 3, Section 33, prohibits the enactment of special laws. The provision in Maryland's constitution against special legislation to prevent one who is, quote, to prevent one who has sufficient influence to secure legislation that would give them undue advantage over others. And that was stated in the Court of Appeals in City Service Company versus Governor in 1981. Also in that same case, they outlined what it took to determine whether the legislative enactment is an admissible special law in the court, and they outlined 6 factors to be considered. 1, whether the underlying purpose of the legislative enactment was actually intended to benefit or burden a particular member or members of a class instead of an entire class. This text amendment is narrowly tailored to apply to only one area of the county. It is further tailored to apply only to a specific category of properties in the county. The number of properties that it could theoretically apply to are about a dozen parcels total. And the chief proponent of the ZTA is Russ Richardson, Millington Crossing Associates, Inc., and Everton, who want to allow the development of a specific contemplated use on the property, on his property immediately. Number two, whether the particular individuals or entity are identified in the statute. In this case, although LRK, in a letter to Mr. Mackey on February 23, 2023, requesting the height increase to 60 feet from the current 45, was on behalf of Mr. Richardson, this may not apply because Millington Associates, Russ Richardson, or Everton are not specifically named. Number three, the substance and practical effect of the enactment of the text amendment. The enactment of this zoning text amendment would affect one stretch of land along one roadway. As explicitly stated in the associated documents and testimony we've heard today, the intended goal of the ZTA is tailored to permit a larger height scale for a distribution center warehouse. The practical effect would be to permit a type of development at a scale previously not contemplated by our zoning ordinance to be immediately constructed after the passage of the zoning text amendment, solely benefiting Everton on land owned by Mr. Russ Richardson. This is because Everton is the only property under this legislation that is in the position to take advantage of the provisions of this text amendment. So that even if the law applies to other properties in the 301 corridor, none of those properties outside of land owned or controlled by a landowner agreement with Russ Richardson are in a position to receive the major benefits of the law and may be disadvantaged because the first-come, first-served nature of the planned distribution center and Mr. Richardson's control of a large block of property in the 301 corridor, giving him an advantage that will depress or any additional equivalent development on other properties in this corridor. Number four, if a particular individual or business sought and received special advantages from legislation, or if other similar individuals or businesses were discriminated against by the legislation. It is self-evident that the individual who proposed the zoning text amendment is seeking personal special advantages over other owners of similar parcels throughout the county. This request for a zoning change was presented to Mr. Mackey in the letter dated February 23rd on behalf of Mr. Richardson, specifically requesting the increase in the height from 45 to 60. Plus, we have heard testimony today that in fact it is Everton that is requesting this height amendment. Not only would the advantage take away oxygen from any similar developments in the short term and perhaps long term along the 301 corridor, it would also allow the EC commercial and I zones in that specific portion of Kent County to have development advantages in the form of greater building heights over properties in other EC commercial and I zones in other districts in Kent County. Number five, the public need and the public interest underlying the enactment and the inadequacy of the general law to serve the public need or interest. There is no apparent public need for a slightly larger size building of a specific type of use for a specific landowner or group of owners. Such a development can still proceed under the established maximum height rules, which are deliberately in place to help preserve the rural character of even Kent County's most commercially developed land. So even if a vague public need interest exists for this type of development, it could be fulfilled without amendment to the law. The general law, therefore, is adequate to serve the public interest, and it is in fact protecting countervailing public interest more readily than the proposed text amendment. And I will say that if it is true that a distribution center cannot exist without the proposed zoning changes, then it follows that such a case was never actually compatible by right in that zone, and that the zoning text amendment would essentially be adding a new use by right. Because if a distribution center is permissible by right and able to be built with the existing height restrictions as stated in the current ordinance, then the general law is adequate and the developer seeks to change only to increase their own personal financial gain with a larger construction. Number 6, whether the legislative enactment is arbitrary and without any reasonable basis. Case law holds that the arbitrariness calculation is not a determination of whether the underlying purpose is arbitrary, but whether the restrictions are arbitrary. In McCain versus Howard County in 2022, the Court of Appeals stated that by narrowing the zoning text amendment to such an extent that it only applies to one property, the Howard County Council rendered the zoning text amendment unreasonable. There appears to be no rational basis for narrowing the law such that it applies to specific properties, and in the near term, only one property in one geographical location of the county. So in line with the 6th factor that I just mentioned, I wanted to point out the important fact that we are in the process of a full comprehensive rezoning for Kent County that would redefine zoning categories at the county-wide level. Allowing a zoning change at this juncture outside the comprehensive rezoning process to benefit one developer as a matter of piecemeal zoning runs afoul of this prescribed rewrite. This is a transformational change that would increase the height of at least one building far in excess of others and permit a use more intense than was previously contemplated in the ordinance. It would be, instead of a general distribution warehouse, under the category of a high-cube fulfillment center warehouse. If such a change is to occur, it should occur properly within the confines of the comprehensive rezoning process so that it can be included in a robust public hearing, holistic consideration of all of the text amendments, of all of the rezoning, and conversations like any of the other multitudinous changes that are being proposed in that rezoning process. The developer is trying to jump the gun with a zoning text amendment. If it passes and the use is later unfavorably altered in the comprehensive rezoning, then the developer is able to lock in vested development rights. Alternatively, if the zoning text amendment passes and there is no change during the comprehensive rezoning, then the developer receives an immense value head start in the project that would only benefit them. It is therefore appropriate to deny the ZTA and require the changes be proposed instead as part of the overall rezoning process, both to assuage concerns of undue governmental influence by a single developer and to solicit countywide commentary on whether changes to development constraints are appropriate and consist with our comprehensive plan, and whether the change in the height of the 301 corridor should be allowed. The planning and zoning staff proposes that this change follows the comprehensive plan's directives, particularly citing excerpts regarding flexibility and focus in the employment center and industrial uses. Developers in this zone already have flexibility and advantages in the 301 corridor that developers in other parts of Kent County do not enjoy by having no maximum footprint size, along with other special considerations that can be applied. This text zoning amendment is an additional flexibility advantage for developers that are only going to be available to landowners in the 301 corridor. However, staff have and I will say that staff have cherry-picked the supportive elements of the comprehensive plan and failed to provide the countermanding provisions of the comp plan goal that a text amendment must fulfill, many of which you have heard or will hear today. Preserving the county's unique quality, encouraging growth to occur around towns and villages, growth that maintains and enhances existing character, ensures that growth looks, that the growths look melds into the surroundings and singles out the 301 corridor as a gateway to the Eastern Shore that must have protection to preserve Kent County's character. The proposed zoning text amendment, even if it applies to more than one property, undermines these directives from the comprehensive plan to focus development with existing conditions and maintaining existing character of our towns, skylines, and buildings, and our building footprints. If a developer wishes to construct a distribution center, they should do so with the carefully considered parameters set forth in the land use ordinance and comp plan, instead of changing the rules so that they can have larger and more intense development for their specific use than any other uses in the zones and much less in the entire county. It is with these comments in mind that I make my request of the Planning Commission to find and forward an unfavorable recommendation for this text amendment proposed here today, and put forward a recommendation that this be included in the current rezoning process going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak?
My name is Frank Lewis, and I have a farm about a little over a mile from the 291-301 intersection. So all of this is in the immediate vicinity of where I work and live. Last Friday night, there was a special event in Chestertown that celebrated the uniqueness of Kent County. It related to what was called the cultural landscape of Kent County, and it was jointly prepared by people in Kent County as well as Maryland Public Television. And it pointed out the uniqueness of Kent County in the entire East Coast. There really is no other place nearby that preserves the unique environment that Kent County does. Kent County has 75% of its land in agricultural use. The closest to that is Caroline with about 60%. Everything else is less than 50. So the character of Kent County that defines it is agricultural, rural, and rural landscaping, which is beautiful to the people who live here and is unique, not just in Maryland, but on the East Coast. Kent County is not unique because of the size of its warehouses. It's unique because of its agriculture and the local environment. We have Middletown, 15 miles to our north. When we first started coming here in 1995, Middletown had a population of 5,000 people. Today it's surpassing 25,000 and growing rapidly. There used to be big farms all around Middletown where there were farms that people could farm. If you fly over that area now and look at it, development proceeds everywhere in the county. And if we want to know what a 500,000 square foot warehouse looks like, all you have to do is go up to Middletown on the south end and look at the ones that have been built there. While I may understand that the developer would consider that beautiful, that's not really what I would consider to be the ideal beauty that I would like to look at. The character of Kent County then is not for industrial warehouses, and it's an inappropriate use for this county. There are many things. The 291-301 intersection is certainly begging for development, and there are many, many things that would be appropriate for development that would augment the character of the county and the environment for people who live here. But a 500,000 square foot warehouse is not among them. We should recognize that the benefit of a huge warehouse and an increase in the size to make it even larger is not to the residents of Kent County. It's to the people who are building the warehouse. That's not really the appropriate function of zoning, to basically appeal to individuals and not to the benefit of the people who live here. Kent County has Smyrna to its east, and all you have to do is cross the Delaware line and start looking at the developments between the Delaware line and Smyrna. It has 15 miles to the south, Centerville, and all the development which has occurred on Kent Island since building of the Bay Bridges. We're in the nexus of the intersection of all of those. We're going to be, you, particularly the Planning Commission, are going to be faced with multiple decisions of similar types here in coming years because the population pressures coming from the south, from the north, from the east are all pointing at Kent County as this last little island of non-development and of rural character. But the point is, that's what makes Kent County unique. It's what makes many people, including myself, want to come here. And if we start building industrial warehouses, it's only the beginning of how you can destroy that whole character. So I would strongly urge that further increases in what already seems to be a mistake in zoning. I can't really believe that it was the intent of the comprehensive plan to build a 500,000 square foot warehouse in this particular area when that was drafted. And I'm not sure at that time that that was even a conception. I don't question what the representatives of Everton said in regard to what the trends are and what's necessary, but such trends should be built somewhere else. This is an inappropriate place. There are multiple other areas for doing that, and here we should be focusing instead on the preservation of the character which is unique to this environment. So I urge an unfavorable recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone online to, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
I'm
Can
Judy.
I speak again? I had just a very short story.
Excuse me, no, everyone gets to testify once. We don't want to have back and forth, so,
Okay,
thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Judy Gifford from Kennedyville, Maryland. What seems to be a simple text amendment is in fact fraught with unintended consequences and potential legal concerns, none of which were discussed in the staff recommendations. This text amendment sure looks like spot zoning to me. The Cornell Law School definition of spot zoning is when a piece of property or groups of property have special zoning laws applied to them that differ from the zoning laws surrounding them. This text amendment is for a specific property very, very clearly defined by staff. No potential properties in Wharton's industrial district, for example, would be eligible for the proposed 60-foot height. We all know that this text amendment is a specific treatment for a specific property. For decades, Kent County has studiously avoided spot zoning and has followed the law. We have been recognized for our rigorous adherence and thoughtful deliberations. Our reputation should not be thrown out the window to please one developer who is going outside the process for a mega-sized development. You know, this isn't a choice of no development or this development. There are other developments that can be brought into this particular property. So let's not be fooled by some of the red herrings that we were told about earlier and the drive-arounds Kent County. And we have to be very clear of what our obligations are. With regard to the comprehensive plan, Mr. Mackey cites that the text amendment addresses one of the highest priorities of expanding flexibility for development. Developers, as stated earlier, have already been granted flexibility with regard to minimum lot frontage, building footprint, and reductions in the side and rear yards. A significant height increase is not flexibility. An increase in height from 45 to 60 feet drastically changes the scale of buildings allowed. And I do know why it was 45 feet. I just did one little bit of research and found that it was determined that that was the tallest building that can be buffered effectively. What rationale is being used to determine the 60-foot request? Just because some warehouse wants it? But how will it change our community? Where are the studies that analyze the fiscal, environmental, public safety, transportation, character, and water quality impacts of a development of this scale? You are being asked to make a decision with no information on the consequences. Just to give you one example of negative consequences, by increasing the height to 60 feet, it is now possible for developers to build a high-cube fulfillment center warehouse that garners significantly more traffic and pollution than a general distribution center. Warehouses and distribution centers are not benign money generators. After approving such developments, Harford County has recently imposed a moratorium. What can be learned from their mistakes? Where is the data on the impact in Harford County? We have no idea what floodgates will be opened by approving this text amendment because the requisite studies have not been done. Nor is flexibility the only highest priority in the comprehensive plan. Omitted from the staff discussion is consideration of balancing equally important priorities of quality of life, protecting the 301 corridor as a gateway to Kent County, and ensuring that growth enhances the designated growth area's character, as well as stewardship of our lands and waters. In fact, the comp plan specifically states that improvements to 301 place the county in a perilous position that is detrimental to the county's vision. When I was researching 60-foot buildings, the sites promoting them described them as gigantic and Goliath. The sheer size of these structures raises questions not only about the deleterious impact on the area's character and environment, but also basic concerns of whether our volunteer fire departments would have the capability to fight a fire in such a giant building. Who would pay for the upgrades needed by our already cash-strapped volunteer fire departments? This text amendment should be thoroughly researched and all potential consequences considered. There is no need to rush to judgment to make a developer happy. The lives of many citizens who live in the shadow of this development deserve equal consideration, as do the other priorities of the comprehensive plan and land use ordinance. Because of this, the impact of this text amendment on the landscape, the people, the environment, and your credibility as a legitimate body has not been thoroughly analyzed and presented to you for thorough deliberation, this text amendment should be denied and sent back for thorough studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has not testified, wants to testify? Online? Okay. Hearing none, Cindy, can we close, did we take a motion to close the public hearing? Yes. I have a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, now we've heard the testimony and the staff report. What are everyone's thoughts? Okay. You address us? No, I meant you don't have to address, you just,
I'd like to put the height question into perspective. We're being asked to make a decision on allowing a change in the height allowance in the 301 corridor. That's it. And it's based on the staff's analysis of current industry requirements for internal height in industrial structures. That's what we're being asked to do. We're not being asked to approve the project that people have referred to. We're simply asked to recognize the change in the requirements for industrial structure dimensions to accommodate a broader variety of applications. That's all. To put the height in perspective, in Kent County, the height limit for silos is 100 feet, correct? 150, okay. There is no limit, as I recall, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, for church steeples, monuments, or other public structures. Is that correct? I'd have to check. All right, but we do know it's 150 for silos. And there's no limit for the number of buildings that can proliferate on farm properties. Is that correct? No. Okay. So it's been suggested here today that we apply a different standard to industrial properties than to agricultural or farm properties.
Paula, why don't you address us, because it's
Okay.
hard, you're talking, we can't.
All right, so my concern here, first of all, the comprehensive plan, while it places a priority on preserving the rural nature of our county, also provides for development opportunities and for building flexibility into our land use requirements for that development. What we've found here is that what we're finding over time is that's becoming more and more essential, that flexibility and balance is becoming more and more essential to support the economic vitality and sustainability of this county. We are already facing severe budgetary issues, severe revenue issues that will place increasing, if it isn't addressed by development, allowable development in the places that we've allowed, which are few and far between, will place increasing pressure on putting additional tax burdens on our residential community, because that's the only place there is to go. So I am, as a member of this commission, in favor of this text amendment. I don't think it benefits anyone in particular. It may benefit the first person in line, but it applies to everybody who comes after them. And in fact, I would argue that the 60-foot limit ought to be applied across the board in all industrial areas of the county, as opposed to segmenting the 301 corridor. Just because the need for this, for the size, for the height, would apply to anyone who wants to locate in an industrial area, could apply to anyone in Kent County. So, I mean, I'll vote for the text amendment as it is, but I think it makes sense. I don't think it's in any way preferential. I think it acknowledges the need for flexibility in our rules to accommodate development that we need to have in the places we've said we want to see development.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have comments?
I sit here, listen to everybody speak and everything. 20 years. You still take the same ruling. You gotta look back and understand something. 20 years ago, we was writing on paper. Then things change. From paper, then you start typing. You're a typewriter. Then things changed. It became a computer. My point is that somewhere down the line, you have to make those changes whether you like it or not. And for the county to benefit from it, I agree with her. I feel as though that you have to make those changes. I remember back years ago when you had one-story buildings. Then they went to two-story with the elevator. Once there was one story. But you have to accommodate for making changes. And I'm one that say, if it's going to benefit Kent County but won't hurt Kent County, and make sure that if they put something up, it's going to be, it has to be right. We can have stipulations on that. You know, they talking about going in 291, the gateway to Chestertown. 213 going in, the gateway to Kent County, Chestertown. You look at it on one side, 291, you come in there, and I gotta agree with Chip. You look over there, there's all this crush and run concrete. Nobody's saying nothing like that. Somewhere down the line, we have to make that change and make it to benefit Kent County. I listen to a lot of things. Another thing, Milton does have a planning board, right? Huh? All right. But they shouldn't make that decision there. bring it to us, say, this is what we decided, and this is what we want. Then we take it, say, okay, if this is what you want, then we'll present it, we'll pass it and present it to the county commission. That's the first ones that's gonna get affected by it is the people in Miller. Let them, I wouldn't want, if I didn't want an orange, I wouldn't want Ray to bring it to me and say, I want you to eat that orange. This is what they doing. They bring it to us, say, y'all make the decision and present it to them. Nah. But I agree with Paul.
Well, this is in the county. or
I understand
For the county. We've talked, that's another discussion about the Millington area thing.
Right.
Right now, it's the applicants in our county.
Well, I agree with that.
Can our fire departments get up on a 60-foot building? I mean, you know, if heaven forbid, there is a problem, do we have the equipment that can get up on top of a 60-foot building and put it out fire? Does Millington have one?
Well, can they get up on a 45-foot
I don't
building?
know.
Can they get up on a church steeple that's
Paul,
gonna
I'm
get
not gonna sit
a
here.
100, you know?
Bill
Bill?
stepped up, he's got maybe some
Maybe he can say
answers
something.
for us.
I had a very informal conversation with the Millington Fire Chief and talked about this height, and he did not express concern for responses to that situation. So,
I don't, you had some more. One of the, whatever we recommend, my concern is that, and apologies to staff, but we still, our definitions are a little weak. I think we heard about solar panels, I think it's wonderful there, air handler units, and then the corridor defined, it says around those areas. I think if we're doing a text amendment, recommending approval of one, we need to tighten those things up, and I feel this isn't that tight, whether you like the 60 feet or not, but I think for neighboring properties, in doing this, do you allow buildings like that, but increase the setbacks, increase the buffering, things like that? I think it's not one thing. We need to look at the whole approach to how thoughtful development will happen in here. Whether 60, I don't doubt the testimony is more efficient, and the Building Trade Association, they always would support that, but I think we do owe it to the character of the neighborhood. We have a zoning request to change a farm on Dudley Chance Road to Employment Center, which would include this, and the impact on those neighbors who are not, right now have a property that's not zoned for this, but could be zoned for this. That's why I think the corridor needs to be tightened up so we know where it is. We know what's allowed by right there, and it is development, it is warehouses, whether it should be this, I think it needs to be more closely defined.
if you all want to include some pointers in your recommendation, I'm happy to work on that definition. The definition is really a piece after the legislation. It's not part of the legislation, just, with internal discussion, staff felt that it might be helpful to have that kind of definition, and I'm happy to continue to work on that if you all have some direction, and then that would be presented as a recommendation to county commissioners, and they can decide if they want to amend their ordinance and include a definition. So that would be my response, sir.
All right, thank you.
I've always felt better if we, quite frankly, when this stuff is handled through an update in the zoning ordinance or something like that, where you could sit there, there would be provisions, if you had a 60-foot building, for berming or something like that, but I'll be honest with you, I don't know what a 60-foot building looks like. I haven't seen one. I may have seen them, but I don't know that that's a 60-foot building. And I sure don't know what a 500,000 square foot 60-foot building looks like. You're just shy of 10 acres. And that's my, look, I'm not for it or against it, but I'm sitting there saying, I have a hard time saying, yeah, I'm for something that
I quite frankly don't even know what in the world one looks like. I mean, it wasn't long ago, we were sitting in here approving text amendments for data centers, being told they were in sheds. So I just don't, I have no problem with 60 feet. My problem is I think there should be some restrictions with that, and I've always felt better if that was included in the, if we got that for the, with the text amendment, I'm fine with it, but I don't see that with this. And I, like you were commenting, the 301 corridor, is it a mile on each side? And if it is, then that should be defined that it's within that 1 mile limit, you know? Because some of those zones are a little bit outside of the 1 mile limit. And then you get right in someone's backyard up in Massey, for instance.
I thought they did define that.
They said around the intersections.
I'm sorry? You have a definition, just 1 mile of this and 1 mile of.
And land surrounding in the general vicinity of the intersection of 299, 313, 330. And in the general vicinity, I think that's not a,
So that's what you have an issue with, or a concern about?
yeah, it's not defined. In and around the general vicinity is not very specific to me.
So if the planning group were to create a map that says this is the 301 corridor, would that,
Yeah, I think whatever we do, I think that 301 corridor should start with that definition. I agree with you that it shouldn't be different in different areas of zoning. If you're going to change the district, you know, there's land in Wharton that could be zoned that way. My feeling is, though, you just can't plop it in one spot, not allow it in another without some other conditions, particularly with screening and buffering and setbacks.
well, there are other conditions associated with 301, including no restriction on footprint, that it does apply in other industrial districts in the county. And you had the height differential, which was 45 feet versus the recommended 60 feet now. So the question is, are we for making all industrial districts uniform in terms of the requirements, or apply different criteria?
I agree with that. The land use ordinance that we're doing now would correct that. I think what we have to do today is, there's a recommendation from, the commissioners have made an application and the staff has recommended it. I just don't like that it's too vague.
In terms of
Yeah,
boundaries?
if we're gonna do a text amendment, it should be clear what we're getting, that's all. I don't think we don't have a clear definition of location, and I think when you do increase, you're definitely gonna increase impact visually, whether people find that important or not, but I think neighbors at least to know that there's consideration in the screening and buffering or setbacks too.
Well, for the purposes of what we're voting on, I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. I think if we were to ask planning for a map of the affected area that they recommend, 301 corridor defined specifically, that I would be comfortable with that.
I think that part, I think I would have to agree with also. I think the 301 corridor needs to have its own separate definition away from other industrial areas. It needs to be, you know, I disagree with you that I think it needs to be all over the county. I think if you're going to do it in the one area, because the rest of the county is what the people are looking at. You know, and all the residents here, that, you know, it is your farming community and whatever, but there needs to be, I think there needs to be some area for growth, some area for bigger, larger buildings possibly to provide employment and whatever, but maybe we need to control it, and we can control it a little bit within the 301 corridor area, because that will provide the transportation, that will provide what is needed for that area. We don't need trucks going all over the county. If you're gonna have a little bit of, high-volume trucks, then let's keep it in one area with that has a larger road and has the ability to do it. Though I will say too, I'm not in a position today, or I don't feel today that I want to make a decision on this. I really don't. I would like to read over some of the public comment. I know there's a lot of prepared comments. I would like to read through them and to make a little better decision. I'm just not prepared to just jump off and say yay or nay. Because personally, I would like to see the commissioners either approve or disapprove what we've already presented them. We're asking for changes in something that hasn't been approved. Does it exist? What doesn't exist? We've put in changes. We spent 2 years making recommendations or whatever. No decisions have been made. Now we're asking for, there's another
Well, this is
change
another one
being
on the
requested. Yeah, it's another on the list. I mean, let's
Well,
get
you're-
something
you're-
done first.
Well, I agree.
I want to get something done first. And then we can, it's been a long time, granted, I realize there is one person that, one group that wants to build a building, but we haven't seen that building, we haven't seen their plans, we've seen a concept of, they couldn't make a difference, they couldn't describe whether it was supposed to be 215,000 square feet or 250,000 square feet, they didn't know. It wasn't on the plan. So I don't even want to discuss that plan until we see it. But this part,
Bill,
I need to see a little more.
If the commission, as we've heard varying, and haven't heard from Ray, but he's gonna jump in here too, but if, and maybe this is a question for Cindy, if we want some more information, could we just table it? Or do we have, or the commissioners have to, I don't know, the applicant's not here. Sorry, Ronnie, I know you're, but.
I think technically I represent the applicants.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's.
Right, it's a
okay.
county proposal.
Okay.
Right. And I believe there's a provision in the land use ordinance that you have to act within a certain number of days. I recall that as being 60. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what Cindy's looking up. Yeah.
It's 60.
60
So we
days.
can,
If that's the will of the commission, I think we need to give them some definitions as things we want to see.
We need to give Bill
Yeah,
guidance.
right,
clear
now, that's,
guidance.
but right now, we have, if someone wishes to make a motion on what was presented, we can do that and vote on it, or I'm hearing, my sense is we're hearing different opinions. It may be a time to give the staff our thoughts are on things that we would like to see in it, and then proceed. That's my opinion, but please add in if you disagree.
I would like to see a couple examples of the buildings, and I would like to see something, at least the proposals for the ordinance in which a building of this size would be screened, how it would be screened, because, and I agree with Chip, the concrete pile out there, to plant a 4-foot pine tree, my great-great-grandchildren, if it's all still around, may be able to ride by there and say, gee, what's behind those pine trees? But for at least 3 generations, they're gonna know what's behind those pine trees.
Yes.
I agree, we need just more information for you to find that.
And I understand with the type of building, because if he can answer me back there, you probably lose, what, 5 feet, 6 feet in height with what the trucks have to back up to? Is that what you were explaining?
is there, in relation to his request to look at a 60-foot building, what buildings in the area, even if we got to go to Middletown, would be in that category? Just so we can physically see.
Do you need them to come to the mic? Do you need them to come to the mic?
We can provide you with that. I do know that Amazon, which we don't do business with Amazon, so there's no Amazon. It's not 500,000 feet, it's 2 buildings of 250.
Well, I don't care about the size. I'm looking at the height. I'm just,
That Amazon, I believe, is 72 feet from the exterior.
Okay.
The highest point of the exterior.
that's all. It's just for my own personal.
Yeah, I believe that's 72 feet
Okay.
to the top.
And Bill, when we talk about 60-foot height, are we talking about the total stuff on top of the roof too can't exceed 60 foot, or the actual roof itself is at 60 foot? I know we figure height different on some buildings.
Right, it's The height definition of the code has a median standard that applies to certain shapes. For a flat roof building with a parapet, it's the tip-top of the parapet, so it would be the very top of the parapet, which would then screen those things that are on the inside.
All right, what do you want to?
I just have a point of order I want to make.
Okay.
Just because I want to be careful. There was testimony earlier that somehow this request is specific to a particular piece of property and raises all kinds of legal issues. I think Mr. Corral and Ms. Murphy, and we want to cooperate with the Planning Commission in working through this question and providing information, but we also don't want to then end up in a position where somebody's saying, look, you all worked with this particular developer to think about what's best for the county, and somehow you've done something inappropriate. I want to clarify, this is a request from the Kent County Commissioners.
I think we understood. We shouldn't have called out Mr.
Well, but I just want to make it clear, there was a lot was said earlier about individuals, and this is a red-haired Eskimo for one developer. There are a lot of other properties.
Okay, thank you, Chip, appreciate it. I think it's up here to, like I say, if someone does want to make a recommendation of either kind, favorable, unfavorable, we can do that. If not, like I said, I'd love to
I
give
would
staff
like-
some guidance on what we think is important in a text amendment, or recommend that we handle it in the land use ordinance.
I would like to put forth that we table this for 30 days to our next meeting so that we can do a little more research and give our planning department a chance to bring forward some more solid
Okay,
and
things
clear
a map,
recommendations
that's-
and a map.
We want a map of the corridor defined?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we,
Now, what,
Well, it's, well, the one that says in and around there, that's what,
and what do we mean by the corridor? Do we mean the 1 mile each side, or do we mean just what's zoned as employment center and industrial?
That's part of the definition.
Wouldn't this be,
within the zones, yeah.
wouldn't this be it?
Which isn't part of the
this trouble is,
text amendment.
it's got this in and around the general vicinity.
Correct,
That's-
that's why I'm asking. Is it just what's already delineated within our zoning law? Is that the corridor, or are we looking at defining the
Well,
whole
I think
corridor?
It's currently not delineated in the zoning law.
Right, it's not.
That's the
That's-
point.
It's, yeah.
But the land is zoned, correct?
There is,
Specific zoning,
all the land in the county has a zoning district, yes,
yes.
including land within the Route 301 corridor, which up till now has not been specifically defined in the land use ordinance. It has been a sort of conceptual term that's used in many, many documents, but it didn't have a specific definition, which we were attempting to address as sort of a result of a conversation because we thought it might come up.
But are they zones, do the zones have specific mappable boundaries? The employment center and the industrial and the,
They are mapped on the zoning map for the county. So
okay, so that's,
every property has a
That's
zoning
it.
district.
Well, the zoning maps can change. We're going through a comprehensive rezoning right now.
Right.
but it,
And they,
I don't think anybody's asked for a zoning for a
we had
zoning
we had it
district
on a
change, have they?
concept plan for Everton. You
Okay.
recused yourself for that.
Okay.
So if I understand it, you would like to see photographic examples of buildings that are 60 feet in height, photographic examples of screening for the buildings that are 60 feet in height, and a map depicting the 301 corridor as opposed to that being placed in language. Is that correct?
Not as opposed to. I think you can.
In addition to?
In addition to.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's that general vicinity thing is just, you know,
Okay.
I think it's, I don't know, that's a tough thing to.
And the map, I think, should correspond to the new any changes that that have been proposed in front of the commissioners now, that came out of the review committee. So
So,
it would be the new districts.
so there currently are no
combined
mapped districts under consideration. It's strictly text amendments to the land use ordinance. There are no map considerations at this time.
So there are no changes to the maps? So there are no proposed changes to the maps?
There's combined.
Combined zoning districts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for Bill.
Yes,
What-
ma'am.
What is the thinking on the timing of, if there's going to be a change to the definition in the zoning ordinance, then that would be a separate text amendment?
I believe it could simply be accepted as an amendment at the third reading. That's usually where amendments occur. So if this body makes a recommendation, and it may not occur, right? The county commission is free to amend or not amend as they choose. This was something intended to address issues that we thought would come up.
So it would be a recommendation to amend the text amendment. It could be that from you, or it could be no
Yes.
recommendation at all on a
Tonight.
definition. On a
Yeah.
definition. No, when you review it again, because I think I've heard you all say that you're going to take some more time.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding. Bill's got a list there, and those kinds defined, and then we have, and any other questions we think of at that time, and to read staff and the testimony and letters we had.
But could we make a motion tonight saying that we recommend favorable consideration, subject to presentation to this group of a map that delineates the 301 corridor that meets with our satisfaction?
Well, I'd like to see the map.
Yeah.
No, subject to.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah.
what would be accomplished by that, because the reason you're deferring is
Right.
to get more information. So you could,
Still create another layer of review.
Yep.
I have a motion to,
To table it this,
I get, well, I don't,
waiting their
I'll wait for the applicant.
input.
Are you, if they have to request a tabling? The applicant.
no, not at all. You can make a motion to postpone your decision on this until the next meeting. Mhm.
Okay. Entertain a motion there?
So moved.
A second?
The motion is to table it, right? Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
to postpone the decision till the next meeting, pending some information further.
That was my proposal. So moved.
Any second? Second. Call for the question. Bill, Jim?
Aye.
Ray? Aye. Paul?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Bill?
I'm Bill.
You're Bill. Mr. Sutton, sir, I saw it. Paul?
Aye.
And I'll vote for the majority. Okay, we will look for your help in doing that again.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
When you have the next hearing, will there be public testimony?
I think if we postpone, we would have to do it again, wouldn't we? Or not?
Well, there'll always be public comment available, yes, so.
You would open it up to public comment, correct? And the new changes will be put forward before the next, a week before the next planning meeting, on Friday before the next planning meeting, is that correct?
It would always be part of the packet for the planning commission, what's considered, so posted online, yes, the same way?
I'm sorry, so it would be public?
Yes. Mhm.
But we're not having another public hearing.
No, I don't think it needs to
It's
be
just-
re-advertised for a public hearing.
Good.
Because you're just postponing it, but there would be certainly public comment, as with every planning commission
Okay.
meeting, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all for participating today. Hopefully, we'll get something done next month. Our next item is general staff reports. Bill, you're at the head of the table. You want to start?
Since I am here, yes. So earlier this week,
Quiet, please, in the back. Quiet, please. Excuse me, can you, yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
thank you. Earlier this week, county commissioners received a letter signed by the chair regarding the land use ordinance changes. I think it was somewhere in the nature of 25 pages. There's links. It's actually up live on their agenda. Anyone can go to that, read the recommendations, and there's a link to each set of minutes, each staff report, so people can find the original request and the different sets of comments, as well as the letters related to that. I'm tasked with moving forward and crafting legislation to reflect all those things that you discussed for 2 years. That is going to take me some time, and I'm working on it. I actually started working on it in January, because there's certainly things that, we already knew needed to happen. So that, the next step is that would be presented to county commissioners for their consideration for introduction, and would come back to this body. They would do that by resolution, would come back for recommendations, and then go through the standard legislative process. I am focusing this as my number one priority to get it done. I'm working nights and weekends, but it's going to take a little time to put together 2 years of discussion into a package. But we're hopeful that it will proceed soon. Again, that package is only text changes. There are no map changes to be considered. The idea being that once there's a body of text that people can react to, that then they may want to make some requests for a map change. So, and then that would be the next half of the comprehensive rezoning, is entertaining map changes by folks who have asked for them, as well as any that the county might have. So that's the big project. Yes, sir.
With the package that we were getting from the consultant, that'll be incorporated into that? It doesn't have to come back up here, does it? Or,
That's the base document.
okay.
And then the changes that have been under discussion will be worked into that document. Chief of those being, I mean, throughout the entire process, everyone was pretty, I think it was unanimous that, the processes that we have need to be streamlined and folded together. And that's one of the really biggest components of that, is walking through the remaining hundreds and hundreds of pages in order to try to fold all those processes into a single stream and address things one time. That's my goal, is that the code addresses things one time in general, so that when we make changes, we make one change, it affects the entire process, as opposed to many of the processes, the entire process, including checklists, are repeated multiple times. So
What is the schedule, Bill, for the commissioners to act on the recommendations?
So there isn't a formal schedule. Comprehensive rezoning is not a process that has those kind of time limits. There are time limits once it's introduced, but it's a legislative process, and it goes through the 3 readings and comes to this board. But there isn't a structure to comprehensive rezoning or a set of requirements.
Where does it stand now? I mean, we recommended a series. You
Yes.
presented them to the commissioners, correct?
Right. The commissioners have received your letter, it's in a packet, and now I'm moving forward with trying to take all those recommendations and put it into a piece of legislation to start the legislative process, to actually adopt it as a bill.
And what's your best guess as to the time frame for that?
I-
Are we talking months? Are we talking weeks? What are we talking?
We're not talking weeks.
Okay, okay.
Nights and weekends, take this weekend off. It's Easter, Bill. please.
Thanks. Thank
So
you.
the notion of folding in this last text amendment that we saw in that process.
So the text amendment that you reviewed earlier is a simple, single-line insertion on 3 pages. So that's really no difficulty at all. That's not an issue. Yeah.
But to wait for it to be addressed in the context of everything else that's on the plate wouldn't necessarily be productive.
Well, regardless of what anyone's opinion on that is, there actually is a timeline for legislative process, and zoning text amendment is a legislative action. This body has 60 days to respond, and then the commissioners would take it up. So that's standard practice.
Where are we in the 60 days?
This is day 1.
Okay.
Anything else? Or more?
No, I don't have anything else, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
I got a question about, just, this actually is probably to the board. I know, since I'm technologically impaired,
Sorry to hear that.
one of the things I had requested, and I know we get, is the building permits. Is there a possibility of getting the building permits printed and put with our information packet?
Printed?
Only because I can't, it won't open up on a cell phone, won't open up on a laptop, whatever.
You're getting the reports, right?
The reports, yeah.
I'll
you know.
print one for you and
Maybe
hand
you
it
need
to
a
you.
Well, if you would, that would be good, that would be good. Shoot, now I forgot what the other one was, there was one other thing.
Are you saying it's the Excel that you can't open?
I'm sorry?
Are you saying the Excel document?
Yeah, yeah.
I think it could be put in PDF easily.
Yeah, it just won't open.
It wasn't PDF the last time, I think. Was, originally it was,
Somebody else in the office is.
yeah.
Yeah, I can ask about that.
You know, if we can get that done. And the other is, like, in the last meeting, we had a whole list of recommendations to the commissioners.
Mhm.
And without going to the website, is there any way we can get some kind of review of whether yay or nay of what they
So-
approved?
So I am moving forward with the recommendations that the planning commission put together. That's what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
but what is their decision? I mean, do they, you know,
They just,
his work before they make their decision.
yeah, tomorrow afternoon maybe. Well, he sent them a letter of what our discussion with each item.
right.
Every item had either no change, change, and then some we were, as a commission, were undecided effectively.
And I'm planning on folding all that into the legislation, and it'll be part of the legislation, and of course, you know, we can receive other instructions, but at this point, I'm assuming that we're putting in your recommendations as the basis of the legislation.
Well, and I was looking at some of the others, like the ag preservation districts and whatever that were approved.
So those are separate from zoning.
Right.
That's not a zoning matter, that's agricultural preservation matter. So it's not, even though it's called a district, it's not a zoning district per se.
Well, it isn't, yeah, but we had to, we made recommendations on all those, correct?
Yes. And you want to summarize it? Yeah, Carla presents those.
And whatever the decisions were, that's all. I'm looking for results. I want to see what, yes, no, maybe.
Probably said, go ahead.
As far as the recommendation, so the Ag Preservation Districts works as a process set up in the county code where we have a local Ag Preservation Advisory Board makes a recommendation, the Planning Commission makes a recommendation, then ultimately the county commissioners will hold a public hearing, and that has not been scheduled at this time because I have not had an opportunity to work with Sandra and the commissioner's office to figure out those dates. But,
That's
revolve on a state schedule, correct?
sort of, yes, yeah.
right. But I was just looking, you know, we don't get a report back as to, you know, what the final results are.
We could make it as part of a staff report at a future meeting, but no, I mean, there's not really a written report. You could follow up with the county commissioner's minutes
Okay.
after the
Well,
public
then
hearing.
I'll have to do that then.
I honestly don't anticipate that any of them will be denied,
You know, 'cause
but we can certainly, I can make a note that at the next meeting, or it's probably the June meeting before I'll have an idea of what happened.
I'm just curious, because it's,
And we can get those meetings on Zoom now, right?
YouTube,
YouTube.
when it's working. We're still working out some of the kinks.
Anything else, Carl? You got-
I was just going to say that I had the privilege to attend the American Planning Association National Planning Conference Saturday through Tuesday, and I really appreciated the opportunity that was granted to me to do that. I learned a lot. We'll be discussing it as a team. There might even be some things changes we make based on how we present information to you from sort of things that I picked up at the conference. And I've also been working with landowners who are already districts to prepare their easement applications, and that's sort of a standard process that we go through every year, and that's not something that comes back before you, but is something that is occurring right now, so.
Mark, anything for us?
Yesterday afternoon, Mike Mold from Public Works, Mike O'Neill from our floodplain administrator and enforcement officer, Brian Pearsall, who's emergency management preparedness planner. And I had a conversation with a representative of the state. I believe it's tied to the Maryland State Climate Commission, asking a variety of questions regarding our floodplain administration, preparation for flooding, and preparation for changes based upon climate differences. And as a result, they're putting together a state report identifying the gaps that might be present in each of the areas. They should be making that available sometime in August, and I believe the purpose of that is to allocate resources and help to fulfill those, or shorten those gaps in terms of preparation for climate change. So just want to report on that. Thank you.
And you had a meeting here, and Carlos was in California, Hawaii, or
I've-
somewhere.
I was only in Philadelphia.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah. Can't we have anything good for us? No, sir. Don't listen to Jim Saunders, that's the question. Cindy, do you have anything for us as a group?
No, if there's anything you want me to report on or get back to you on, let me know.
Anyone else have anything, or if not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I
moved.
had something.
Oh,
To the next meeting, I don't know if I'll be able to make it, because I get operated on my throat, on my vocal cord again. And I think I have to, can't talk for 2 days, for a day or something. I'm hoping the doctor told me that I can be able to talk today when I come to the meeting. Ray told me, say, come and just do this. But I'm hoping.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
right.
This is
We
the
can give you
third.
paddles, yes or no.
Yeah, make it simple.
So I go on, I think it's May the 9th that I get operated on again. They keep coming back, and, but he only saw one this time, so I'm hoping that everything will go good.
Good, I hope so.
Okay.
Good luck to you.
All right.
All right, hope everyone else, health is good. Yes, thank you, good idea.
Did we vote? Are we done?
I think, I had a motion from Paul and a second from Ray. I heard him.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, I'll see you.